Hi, everybody. It's Chris Castleman with the Coos County Citizen Council. Happy Memorial Day. I've got a special for you guys on this holiday weekend. I was able to get a hold of some people that are involved, or a family of a victim in an interesting case here in Coos County. And, there's a lot of cases in Coos County. A lot of crime happens around the country. And what struck me with this one is that typically you assume that the system will be there for you in some way, right? You don't think every day that something bad is ever going to happen to you, but you kind of have this understanding in the back of your head that when it does, um, that there's a system there for you if you choose to use it. If you choose to report your crime, and if there's evidence of that crime, you have a typical understanding that that sort of stuff will end up being pursued and hopefully result in a conviction in court. So we have the case today of Jason. I don't know how to say his name. Jason Burton, I believe, is how you say his name, and he was charged with some very serious crimes. So you can see this is the original indictment. Um, some domestic violence crimes, so rape, sexual abuse, assault, strangulation, very serious felonies. I don't have it in front of me right now, but I believe this was one of those crimes where there are minimums. There are minimum sentencing of more than 10 years in prison. Very, very serious crimes that should be taken seriously. And I found out about this through a Facebook post because this happened 2.5 years ago. And the family and the victim have been through a lot, and after cooperating with law enforcement for 2.5 years, doing everything they needed to do, ultimately this is being pled down to a misdemeanor assault 4, which is not even something that there would be prison time for. And if you're familiar with Coos County, because we do not have enough beds in the jail, will most likely result in minimal to no time in our county jail for various very, very serious crimes. So um, we will get into all the details. I have the mother and sister of the victim waiting to come on and talk with us. We've all looked at the court documents, grand jury testimony, the original police reports, and I just want to hear from them mainly how it's impacted their family. But without further ado, I will bring them on. And if I can click the right buttons, here is Allie and Dana.
Hi,
Yeah,
Chris.
going.
Hi, Chris.
Thanks
For
for
having me.
joining us on the holiday weekend. I'm sure you guys are busy. You're trying to get the word out. And I appreciate you guys taking the time to talk to us. So I'll just jump right into it. I mean, uh, and maybe a chronological way to go about it would be best. We'll get into the details of the crime in a bit, but I'd like people to understand, because I don't believe you guys are from here. I believe you're based in Utah. So tell me, how did the victim, your sister, your daughter, come to find herself in Coos County? How did she meet the defendant? Give me a little bit of background on that.
You want to take it, Mom, or do you want me to?
Why don't you take this one?
So Andy moved out to Coos Bay, I believe about a year prior to meeting the defendant. She moved out there to go to aesthetics school. And during that time, she had met him, I believe, at I can't remember if it was a bar or something like that. She met him, and, at first it was very much she was very excited to meet this boy. He was love bombing her, like beyond love bombing her, showing her, bringing her gifts and extravagant dates. And they very quickly jumped into a relationship. They dated for about 9 months, I believe, before they broke up. I don't know how much you want me to get into the crime itself right now, Chris, but yeah, that's where it all started, was about a year into her living in Coos Bay.
Well, and just to frame the timeline for viewers, she broke up with him about a week before this incident happened, correct?
Yes, she did.
There was what was that trigger? There, I mean, there was obviously some history, some things I read about, that this unfortunately was a pattern. But what happened in Florida? They went on a trip to Florida about a week or two before. And what do you know of that event?
They went out there for his brother's wedding. They were all staying in an Airbnb together, my sister, the defendant, and his family. There was an altercation that happened between the defendant and his stepfather. I believe the police ended up getting called. He was uninvited to his brother's wedding. And Andy ended up going to the wedding. When she came back, I believe Jeishon was there at the Airbnb. And that night, he ended up pushing her up against a wall, put his hands around her neck. The police were called again, and they didn't take it seriously. They pretty much said because she didn't have bruises that they couldn't do anything about it. So she ultimately ended up, having to fly home with him and his family back to Oregon. She broke up with him and asked him to come get his belongings out of her apartment within the next week. So yeah, that is how it all started.
And that really made me sad actually reading that police report. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Gabby Petito story, a young girl from Florida murdered.
We are.
That, there were videos of that. I believe they were near the Grand Tetons, is where she was murdered, and they were actually pulled over like the week before, a couple days before, and it was a domestic violence situation. Someone called the cops on them because they saw her being hit by her boyfriend. And the cops, just if you watch the video and the ultimate police report, I mean, they didn't really believe her. I think they even thought she was the aggressor. And it's gut wrenching. And it reminded me of that reading there wasn't a police report even generated. What it was is, I think it was the defense reached out to the police officer who was involved with that case, who showed up at the Airbnb, and his recollection was just that simply that she was making it up. And that's just, I understand that people do lie from time to time, and I understand for the police that's probably pretty hard to try and weed through all that. But it's just when you look back and you go, man, there's obviously a pattern, and it's like, do we really think that there was a pattern of her just making all this up all the time and then breaking up with him and not wanting to be with him anymore? And then this anyway. So we'll get into the incident. It was just really tough for me to read that, and I'm sure for you guys to find out about how it just wasn't taken care of in Florida like it should have been.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that if
Dana,
that event had been taken seriously, things might have ended up different.
and that's just such a phrase you hear a lot,
Yeah.
if blank had been taken more seriously. So in general, I think that what you guys are trying to do is to make sure that this one does get taken seriously, so that future victims, future women in Coos County who are victims of things like this, get the help they need, the assistance they need. So Dana, as Andy's mom, how was it, when your daughter originally moves to Coos Bay? Like, I'm sure you assumed it would be just like her living in your hometown, like there would be nothing to worry
Right.
about. Obviously, bad things happen sometimes, but there's a system there to take care of it when it does, a hospital and law enforcement and all that. So
Right.
maybe could you give us some insight into what it was like when she moved there, and then, maybe go into, how you found out about the incident and the days following?
Andy really loved Coos Bay. She loves the ocean. She loves the small town vibe. She loves the outdoors. And she got a cute apartment on the waterfront. She really liked living there. She made a lot of great friends in the community. She worked at Seven Devils Brewery. She really enjoyed being there. And I don't know if she met him there or at another establishment. I'm not sure how they met, truthfully. But skipping forward to the event, it was Thanksgiving week. And I tried to call her on a Tuesday and she didn't answer. And I thought that was very strange. And then called her several more times that evening. I called Allie. If you heard from your sister, we couldn't reach her. And we're a very close family. The three of us talk multiple times a day. And I didn't hear from her the next morning. And I found out because Andy had called Allie and told her what had happened. And I mean, I was hysterical. I was fuming. I was angry. I was upset. What can I do? This is my child, my baby that this happened to. And it's just horrifying to me that all of this happened and then it takes them 2 days to locate him in a town that size. I mean, I've been there. It's small. We know who his family is. We know who his grandparents are. We know his parents were. We knew where he lived. We just don't know why it took so long to get a hold of him. And then they didn't keep him long enough.
Yeah, that can be tough sometimes. But it was interesting reading the police report. They ended up even actually arresting him because of another incident. And they didn't really get into what that incident was. I wonder if they weren't allowed to talk about it
I don't
in
know.
the police reports, but essentially they got called to the house he was staying at, his grandparents' house, for a domestic violence situation, a family dispute or something. And one of the law officers from Coos Bay, who was involved in the case and had a arrest warrant in hand, was like, "Well, I guess I'm going to go to that and see if we can arrest him." And he tried to flee. He like
Right.
they one thing that was interesting was they said in the police report that he was known to law enforcement. He was very familiar with them. They didn't get into why. He doesn't seem to have any prior, misdemeanor or felony convictions that I saw. Or maybe he had some like driving while suspended sort of thing. So, but anyways, so the police see him, they recognize him, they chat, he's like, "Hey, how's it going?" And then they go to, arrest him and he runs into the garage, starts shutting the garage door and tries to flee. I mean, um, that's just, anyways, that says something to me. So,
Because it's a sign
very,
of guilt to me.
so Allie, you got the call. What was that like? What walk me through those first few days, the incident and then following.
Yeah, it was awful. I knew he was going to be there. They had plans to get his stuff out of the apartment, and I was waiting for her to call me to say that it was done. I hadn't talked to her at all that morning, and I think it was around 3 o'clock my time. She finally called, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, is he out?" And it was a FaceTime, and I could see that something was very wrong. I asked her what happened, and she started to tell me, he took my phone, he took my keys, he dragged me into the room by my hair, he pinned me down, he strangled me, all of the things. And before she could even finish the story, it just said, call the police, call the police. And so she called them, and she called me back about 10 minutes later and said they're on their way. And I remember I stayed on the phone with her until they got there. And then I just remember feeling like so helpless because we're here in Utah. She's out there. We don't have any family out there really that we can call and ask them to go physically be there with her. And at Coos Bay from Utah, it's not an easy or quick place to get to, right? There's no quick flight. It's a 16-hour drive. So we're trying to figure out like how we can best help Andy immediately. And it was Thanksgiving Eve too. So lots of people were out of town, and I remember her calling me back and saying they're taking me to the hospital. And I talked to her a lot while she was waiting, and they ultimately told her we don't have someone available that can do the same exam today because everyone's on vacation. And so I can't remember how many days later exactly. I think it was maybe 3 or 4 days later she finally got the exam done, but just feeling like, how is this exam going to come out knowing that it's been so much time has passed, right? So that was like our first like big concern. Yeah, I that Thanksgiving was absolutely horrible, and then we're trying to get Andy on a flight out here, but the law enforcement is saying we need her here. She's got to do her interviews. She had to relive this over and over with police officers, with nurses, with doctors, with the defense, or not, sorry, with the DA, and just continuing to talk about it, and then going to grand jury that next week and having to relive it over and over. And so, she had to stay there, and that was horrible for us, wanting to just physically be with her and hug her and make sure that she was, mentally okay to get through the read. It felt like she was being violated over and over and over again because
having to relive it.
The mental, having to relive it and tell so many people the story over and over and over again. So yeah, it was just it was emotionally very draining on us. I mean, it has been the entire time, but that first week was awful.
And because you guys don't, or because she didn't have family in the area, she was relying heavily on the systems that are in place. Outside of friends and family. Did she have any other friends? Did she have like a best friend in Coos Bay that was helping her out with any of this?
Yeah, she did have support from her girlfriends, and they would go and check on her, and she had a lot of great support from her coworkers, who were, communicating with us and making sure that, we knew that she was safe and okay to continue on doing the things that she needed to do with law enforcement.
Good thing that she had that support system there. But and I'll recap briefly for people who have just joined. Why is this important? Why are we talking with some of the victim's family in this case? What makes this case stand out? And it illustrates a complete breakdown, in my opinion, a complete failure of our system. We all know, we all joke about Oregon and how bad the policies are, and we unfortunately all know that violent crimes like this occur often. And with that in mind, this still stands out. This case still stood out to me because when you see the conviction rates for crimes like this, and you go, wow, a lot of these go unreported, not non-convictions, and people walk free. You kind of in the back of your mind, you go, well, there probably wasn't any evidence. There wasn't any evidence in the rape kit, or they waited too long, or there was no video surveillance, or the guy was really slick and he was able to create some alibi or something. Like you just assume that something exists there. And in this case, there was a lot of stuff that exists. There was surveillance footage. There was a rape kit done. There was a friend that gave him a really good alibi, and it completely blew up in his face because of the surveillance footage. And I believe there was an allegation that he later beat his friend up. So his friend said, "Screw it, I'm not going to cover for you anymore, and I'm going to talk to the cops." So a lot of the details in this case, when it first came across, Allie, I think you had first posted it online, and I saw it, and I'm like, okay, it's pretty easy to look up, documents and stuff. So I looked it up and I started looking into it, and I just went, wow, even in your post, you detailed like why this was so different, all the evidence that you guys had, and I just couldn't believe it being dropped all the way down to misdemeanor. So I was like, there must be something. And I just looked and looked and looked, and there isn't. But So just to go back, you were talking about the few days after, she's doing exams at the hospital, and that for me was the first breakdown that I saw. I understand it was the holidays, it was Thanksgiving, um, but they said that they would get somebody there, and she went to the hospital, and then they weren't. No one showed up. I believe she waited there for a significant period of time, and they were not able to do that rape kit exam until, like, wasn't it 2.5 days later, I believe.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, you don't think that that's a thing, that they would wait. You'd think that that would just be, you'd walk into any hospital, you'd say, I've been raped, and they would instantly do a rape kit. I don't know if that's from us watching too much TV that we think that that's reality, but why is that not a reality here? And so that's definitely something that I'll be talking with people. Is there a way to fix that, to always just have somebody ready? I don't know how that broke down, but um while she's doing all this stuff, right? So she's talking with the police. The police are grabbing surveillance footage. She's at the hospital. You guys are trying to support her from afar. Her friends are supporting her. So I'm just going to throw something up on the screen because this jumped out on me big time. This is from uh, the police report, I believe. One of the documents that I got, and it says when the police arrived, they photographed her and seized her clothes. The defendant was arrested on November 23rd, uh, and the next day he began to call his family members. So he's in jail, right? So he's in jail, and he's calling his family members while she's going through absolute hell, and you guys are going through absolute hell for days. He's in jail, and he should be taking a timeout and thinking about why he's sitting there. But instead, it says he began to call his family members and ask them to try and get Miss Shramian to drop the charges. He also called his friend and made attempts to have him make a contract for Miss Shramian, offering her $10,000 by Monday if everything is cleared up. He offered to give an additional $5,800 per month for an entire year if it was all cleared up that day. He also made similar comments to his mother. That is mind-boggling. And actually, I believe this is from like a defense motion because they were trying to get it thrown out of court and not essentially allowed in the trial. Can you guys talk to that? This one blew my mind.
Yeah, we thought for sure that this would be a cause to not let him out on bail. Witness tampering of some kind. There's got to be something illegal there, and we were extremely disappointed a week later when his bail was lowered from $500,000 to $100,000, meaning that they only needed to put up $10K to release him. It was just completely devastating.
And can I add, when he did get released, Andy, he had not returned the keys to her apartment. So she had to move apartments in the same building. And it was a huge, on top of all this, on top of waiting for her rape exam, all these things added up. Then she has to hurry and move, like, secretly to another floor, to a different side of the building from where it happened.
Unreal. I mean, yeah, she's spending every hour of her day trying to get out of this hell, trying to fix what somebody else did to her because she's the victim. And you have Mr. Burton sitting in jail pretending he's the victim. He's spending every waking hour of his day thinking he's the victim, thinking someone did something to him, and trying to find every way he can to get out of this mess. And it just, that juxtaposition just kills me. Here's another a document where they talk about it towards the bottom. I mean, he's even having his friend, it says the last sentence there. Later that day, the defendant asked Mr. Brainard to look up rape for its definition. He wanted to see how long after sexual intercourse rape kits can be done and if they could pinpoint the exact time when the rape happened. I mean, these are
He
these are
admits it.
acts of someone who is guilty. I don't know why else you would be doing these things if you weren't.
Right.
And for them to be trying to throw this out and not have it in court, and this was, pretty much right away. And now 2.5 years later, we know where the case stands. But this was like, right away. And I will note, hasn't he gone through like 4 or 5 different attorneys?
I
At
believe
least
it's
5.
7 or 8 at this point.
I think we're on 6.
Wow.
Yep, he's gotten
And
all of them to request to be released. We have our theories as to why, but
yeah, they're not very specific in those documents. They essentially just point to some different statutes, but it looked like at least one of them had to do with morality. The lawyer left on a moral issue. Another one was conflict of interest, and again, they don't really specify. But absolutely, I'm just, I wasn't there and I didn't know Andy at the time, and I was just really trying to, get to know through these court documents who the people were involved and who the players are. And just, man, him sitting there in court, and instead of trying to take responsibility for what he did and maybe again, take a time out from the world, he's actively trying to shut her up.
To buy
I mean,
her way out.
and he didn't
and
understand. I
that
guess
too.
it wasn't Andy pressing the charges. It's the state. Like, she could have done nothing, even if he did give her the money. It wasn't her. All she did was report
Right.
it.
Right, at that point, it was already out there. There was already a grand jury indictment. And for people who also don't understand that process, I mean, evidence was presented in front of a jury of your peers. Now, the threshold for a grand jury indictment is lower, than a conviction in court, but still, they looked at the evidence and determined that it was likely that a crime occurred. And then again, you have this guy in jail doing all these things. It's just nuts. And a note for law enforcement or anybody watching this who's like, Chris, you're out of line. You're just being judge, jury, and executioner. No, typically, I'd like for the court system to work, and I'd like for people to be judged by a jury of their peers. But I guess we can get into that right now. What's happening is a really crappy plea deal has been offered and accepted, and he's not getting that time in court. The victim, your sister and daughter, are not. She's not getting the opportunity to confront the defendant in court, to tell her story. And there is no jury of peers that will judge him. So unfortunately, this is what we have to do. This is second best because we have a very short window. I believe it's 2 weeks, maybe even less than that at this point, before sentencing, to potentially turn things around. And this is what we've got to do. So I don't know which one of you guys want to take it, but describe, jump from, we talked about the initial incident a little bit, and we'll get into more details in a second, but jump to now, after all this time has passed, what happened in the past couple weeks with the case?
In the past couple weeks, I think Andy has been let down again by the entire system. We've had multiple dates for trial scheduled. We have all arranged to get there, to take time off, to be supportive. She has to take time off work every time it's been canceled. She went out in January. She was there. She was ready. There was witnesses there. Yet again, they pushed it out after she was already there. We had a date for June 1st, the entire week scheduled for trial. And the district attorney took it upon herself to just say, nope, we're just going to do this, and canceled it with no notice for Andy.
Well, and I spoke with Andy a little bit about this. So up until this point, she told me that things have been going great. like her relationship with the DA. She really thought she was a champion for her. The DA was championing her cause, that she was going to seek justice on her behalf. She mentioned some moments in court where she really stood up for her and really seemed to know the severity of what happened and the impact it was having on her, and that she was communicative the whole time, up until the past couple weeks. She said, there was an issue that came up in January about some DNA evidence potentially not being tested properly. We're talking about DNA evidence that showed the victim, that the defendant. I'm uncomfortable saying this on air, but that there was DNA found on the victim's stomach, from the defendant.
Correct.
DNA from semen. So that was found, and that was not the issue with the testing. There was no issue with that, from my understanding. And I even talked to the defense attorney, and that was his understanding, that this was not really a situation where the DNA evidence was going to potentially exclude the defendant. This was just simply like paperwork, it seemed. I really couldn't get a solid answer out of the defense attorney, but it really just seemed like it was paperwork. That there was, every time you do one of these DNA tests, there's like I wrote it down somewhere. There's what did it say? Uh, there's reagents. There's something called a reagent. So if people want to look it up, he said that whenever you do testing, there's reagents, and you have to test the reagents. And it's not that they didn't test it; they just didn't mark something on the form. And that was essentially what it bottled, down to. And that was just mind blowing so that came up in January after all this time, about 2 years. That came up in January. That was the issue, from my understanding. And okay, maybe there's an issue. Maybe they have to be retested, and they ultimately were. But that shouldn't affect the surveillance footage, right? That shouldn't affect some of the details we talked about, where he's making phone calls from jail, trying to convince his family to pay her off. There's other evidence in this case. They could have even just thrown out all the DNA evidence, and it probably wouldn't have mattered. Now, I'm not a prosecutor, but I'm talking too much, so I want to let you guys explain some of that. Maybe go through, Allie, you're pretty aware of all the details in this case. Maybe if you could just kind of give a rundown of like the key major evidence, the evidence that they have. So.
Yeah. The big piece of evidence that I constantly think about, it just breaks my heart, is that Andy was going to the neighbors' doors and knocking and trying to get somebody to help her. Because he took her car keys and her phone, she was essentially stuck there because she didn't know where the police station was, which is something that I want, women everywhere, please know where your local police station is, because she found out after that it was a block and a half away. She could have gone to the police station, but anyway, she was knocking and asking for help, and everybody on the floor was gone except for one neighbor. She knocked and knocked, and he was asleep. And by the time he had answered the door, she was already pulled back into the apartment. So the neighbor goes to her door, and this is all on video. He listens. He can hear Andy screaming for help,
crying.
He went back into his apartment, and he later told the DA that he very much regrets not doing anything, but he didn't want to get involved. And he heard her screaming multiple times throughout different hours of the night, trying to get help. And that surveillance footage is absolutely heartbreaking. Knowing that somebody could have stopped this in a, before it escalated to the point that it did. When she knocked on
her door,
called. She was bloody. it was bad. And yeah, you see their surveillance footage of Jeishon pulling her back in, physically pulling her back into the apartment to continue the abuse. So that's something that I just constantly think about. You know, I hope that people out there, like if somebody is asking for help, for the love of God, like do something. Don't say you don't want to get involved. Like this is, you know, when people are asking for help, it's serious, right? Like it takes a lot of courage too to do something like that.
Yeah, it's one thing to hear like your neighbors fighting and just hear yelling, and it's kind of unintelligible, but this was screaming, "Help me." He clearly, here, I'll throw it up on the screen. So this is from the police report. Um, my logo's covering the, there we go. So this is the police report. And if you read that fourth line there on the top, you know, Grayson told the police that Tranian was screaming at the top of her lungs, "Help me." Top of her lungs. Not, this is not, you know, some crying and "help me" or something. This is screaming at the top of her lungs. And I believe he testified that he heard her multiple times. And she even walked down and knocked on his door.
Mhm.
And he was just too late. I guess he didn't have pants on or something. And just heartbreaking reading through that and just putting myself in that situation. You know, unbelievable. You know, and I don't want to cast judgment on the neighbor. I wasn't there, you know. I don't know, but my goodness, like you said, Allie, if you're ever in a situation like this, anyone, please do something. Um, and then you know, the surveillance footage corroborated everyone's story except for Jeishon, who said that he wasn't even there. We'll get into that in a second. You know, for people who are new to this case, I mean, he literally said he wasn't even there. He had a friend even tell the police that he was at his house for the night. And if you guys want to know more information about the case and kind of see this all a timeline and it all spelled out, you can go to this website I set up to kind of keep everything organized. But this is the on the screen right now are it's the I believe it's the police officer um, describing what he saw in the surveillance footage. Uh, and that middle one is gut wrenching to read. At approximately 4:20 in the morning, Shranian comes to the door to the apartment again and tries to escape. Shranian is yelling, "Help me," numerous times, and she is forcefully pulled back into the room. Um, Unreal. You know, they have this on camera happening.
It is
It's
unreal. It's unreal that that isn't enough for the DA to continue taking this seriously. She took it very seriously until a couple weeks ago, and now it just doesn't matter anymore, apparently.
well, and I spoke with the defense attorney the other day on Friday for quite a while, and it was mostly an off the record conversation. But I did get his permission to I guess relay one quote from him, and it was in relation to I was asking about, you know, like what changed. You know, you came onto this case late. Pretty much everything, all the discovery was already done. It was set for trial. I think he came on in November and it was set for trial in January. He barely had any time to really do anything. So what changed? And what he told me was, quote, there were major complications with DNA, and that's a whole complicated situation. And again, you know, it was mostly an off the record conversation. So we got into what the complicated situation meant. And I just didn't hear anything from him. And I don't see anything in the court documents where, you know, it was something where they were able to prove through DNA that he had never had sex with her or hadn't had sex with her recently or something that would really just blow a complete hole in the victim's credibility. It wasn't like that. This was something where the crime lab came back and said we need to retest. we need to retest the evidence. For whatever reason, there was a tiny mistake made, a clerical error, so we just need to retest it to make sure it's solid. And they asked for um, essentially a protective order that they couldn't be held liable or mentioned in court as being like ineffective or not really doing their job because it would affect their other cases. And that was really it. That was like really those were the major complications. Again, the defense attorney saying there was major complications. Normal people would say, come on, you guys are really running with that one. And they did. This was something that I believe the DA told Andy that it just meant that the trial would be continued further, that we'd have to retest, we'd have to do some things. They're going to get some more documentation. It's going to take some time. And because of that, it's going to get delayed again. But I don't think she had any insight into thinking that it would be just cast aside and pled down to a misdemeanor. So that, I don't know if you guys want to get into that. When did that happen specifically? So trial originally set for January, then it was continued to May 20th or 21st, which was just a couple days ago.
Yeah, the trial in January was rescheduled to June 1st, but early May came around and Andy had not heard a word from the DA, nobody. So she reached out to the DA and asked for an update. She got a phone call from the DA where she, explained that they still hadn't received the results, even though it had been 5 months. I feel like there's something that could have been done there more proactively, but because of that, she felt that the defense was going to ask for a continuance again. And in that same conversation, she really made Andy feel like she should just give up. Like, it's been enough time. Maybe you should just move on with your life. That was the feeling that Andy walked away with. And, we all said, okay, the DNA is not working out, then let's drop the rape charge. It doesn't change anything else that happened. If you feel like you can't get this rape charge because of that DNA, then drop that one. Let's go to trial with the rest of it. It does not change what happened. It doesn't change any of the other evidence. It doesn't change the injuries that Andy had. The photographs.
Huge bruises.
She suffered a TBI. She went through CT scans. She has a brain injury from losing consciousness more than once.
They even talked about she had popped blood vessels in her eye, which is consistent with being strangled to the point of blacking out.
Yeah. And in the photographs, you see handprints. Like, the bruises are handprints around her face and her neck.
Andy came home a couple weeks after that, and she was black and blue. She stayed here for a month through the rest of the holidays. We took care of her. We tried to nourish her soul and make her know that she's loved. But when I saw her get off the airplane, my daughter was a mess. Beat up, swollen, bruised. And this was over 2 weeks later.
I can't even possibly imagine what that was like. I do want to say on the behalf of Coos County that I am very sorry for what has happened.
Thank you.
Not only what happened originally, but what has happened since. This is not the best we have to offer anyone who lives in this area. And so we'll get into it at the end, what people can do to help. How do we help? There's a lot of people that want to help. So we'll get into that at the very end. And I have a little bit on that website that I put up here. I'll put it up on the screen again. At the very bottom, if people want to help out, there is a sentencing hearing on, I believe it is June 1st let me pull up my own website. June 1st at 8:30 a.m. at the Coos County Courthouse. That's a Monday. And that is something people can do. They can show up. It's a public hearing. You can show up. You're not going to be able to say anything. It's not like a city council meeting where you can talk, but it's just being there is going to show a lot of support. I get a lot of gripe sometimes from law enforcement, right? We're being very critical of the system, a very sensitive part of the system. And, they say, look, you don't know how it is. You don't know. They put all these rules in place in Oregon, and it's a really shitty state to be a law enforcement officer in, to be a prosecutor in, and it's hard. And then they don't fund us. There's not enough money. There's not enough money to fund the jail. There's not enough money to fund enough prosecutors. So we're overworked. We don't have time to take things to trial. I get that. I really do. But here's what I don't see. I don't see law enforcement, and that's the DA's office, the sheriff's office, the police department, all of it, all under one umbrella. I'd really like for them to at least reach out to you guys. I mean, the very little they could do. And if you guys, if anyone in law enforcement needs their contact information, I'd be willing to give it to you, and I can put you in touch with them. But I mean, just a simple message. All you have to do is say, I am sorry that our system failed you. And maybe just by saying that one sentence, it'll mean a little more to you that our system has failed, and it might kickstart some activism. I'd like to see more of those people be activists. And I know it's hard. You'd be fighting your own system, your own profession, but that's what we need. We need everyone from all walks of life, all professions to step up and do this. So the other thing, it would be great if some of them came to court. I know that's a lot to ask, but if you're from another police department, it shouldn't be that big of an ask. But even if you're from the Coos Bay Police Department, if you're from the sheriff's office, or if you're in the prosecutor's office, I don't think there's any rules against you attending court again, or sending an email that just says, I am so sorry, commenting on Facebook and say, I am so sorry. That's all you have to do. And again, it's as much for the victims and the family as it might be for you. Sorry, that's my little editorial there. It's just like one of those things that has always bothered me since stepping into this arena, that you're almost like not allowed to criticize law enforcement. You're supposed to back the blue, you're supposed to support them. And ever since the stuff back in 2020 with the Black Lives Matter riots and things, they really feel sensitive to criticism. They feel like everybody's against them. And I just like to think more of the victims, in these situations. Your victims and the family. It's like, well, I bet they feel like everybody's against them too, and I think they're a little more important. So that's my editorial. I do want to get a little bit into more of the details. So we've mentioned this friend. So Jeishon had a friend, and initially he told police that he was staying with this friend. Or I guess he didn't even talk to police, but his friend was there at this Thanksgiving event when he was arrested. And he immediately tells police, it's in the police report, he immediately tells them, he was with me all night and I have surveillance footage of it. The police follow up, they go to the friend's house, I believe the next day, and they ask for the surveillance footage. Well, he didn't have it. I believe he gave some excuse, like he sent it to somebody else's cell phone or something, or he wasn't able to show it to police at the time, and they called him down to the station. And that's where the trail ends for me in terms of pulling public record. But I've heard from some other people that essentially he backed out and recanted. I mean, the surveillance footage from the Tioga building, from her apartment complex, clearly shows him there pulling back in the apartment. So we know it was a lie, but maybe one of you guys can get into that detail a little bit, how that came to be, how the friend flipped, what went on with that.
Yep. So when he was bailed out, his one of the rules was that he was to reside at his grandparents' house. We know that was not happening because this friend came forward. The police or the DA's office is the one that told us this information. That friend went to the police and told them, I'm ready to tell you everything. He just assaulted me. He beat me up. I don't know. We don't know why that happened, but he was ready to tell them the truth of everything that he knew because of that. So You know, we knew that he was not only assaulting people, more people, but he was also not following the terms of his release by staying at his grandparents' house. I mean, that's just one of the many.
That's just one of the
his terms of release, but yeah.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Dana. You were going to get into.
I was going to say he was seen going into different public restaurants, bars, whatever. He wasn't allowed to be anywhere where there was drinking. Yet, in December of 2025, he was also arrested for a DUI. Nothing happened. It was a stipulation of his release that he not drink, then he gets arrested for a DUI, but not held. They didn't revoke his probation on this incident because of that.
And Coos County, or at least recently, has been surprisingly efficient with DUIs and prosecuting and holding people accountable. So I did find that alarming as well. He essentially entered an immediate deferment program where essentially if you commit no other crimes, it's just, you definitely don't get any accountability, but I believe it's also removed from your record.
Wow.
That's insane and that was while he's on release, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's called probation, but I mean you're on
I don't know the
release from jail. There's certain stipulations. Wild, but part of that is the issue with our county not having funds to fund the jail, or not that they don't have funds, but they're choosing not to fund the jail, and because of that, probation violations are rarely they rarely pick people up for that. They rarely hold them more than a couple days, and that, I believe that would be probably the mindset they were in, that it would only hold them for a couple days. But I think what you guys would think is, hey, well, okay, do it, hold them for a couple days, you know, we'll take what we can get. We did have a question. Someone asked if you guys have any animosity towards the DA.
I mean, I have a lot of questions. I don't have animosity. She, you know, like you mentioned, she was Andy's champion for the last 2.5 years up until 2 weeks ago. We have a lot of unanswered questions. I don't know her personally. I just want to know, you know, why she's letting this go when it's all there.
I have extreme disappointment. We have a legal system, not a system that's seeking justice for women who have been raped. The DA is a woman. She should take this more seriously.
Yeah, and it comes down to what happened in the past couple of weeks, and I'm still investigating that. I still have a call in to hopefully chat with the DA about it. I'm obviously, she's not going to be able to give me much information, but I'd like to know what really happened in the past couple of weeks that changed. What was the catalyst for this plea deal? Because you know, the DNA issue came up back in January.
Mm-hmm.
And there was no talk of a plea deal. This only happened the past couple of weeks. So there's something there, and I'm going to try and get to the bottom of it. The defense attorney strongly suggested that I pull some audio files, some testimony from a hearing, and I'm going to listen to that and see if there's any information in there that might point me in the right direction. But someone said that if he was released on bail, that would have violated his bond. I mean, yeah, like, isn't that what those systems are for? You know, isn't that
exactly?
It's just, there are so many check marks
Yeah,
on the list of things that went wrong here.
I was reviewing the document to his bond. I highlighted the rules that we know that he's broken for sure. Number one being to abide all state, local, and federal laws. Driving drunk is definitely against the law. That he would not depart the state without permission. We know for a fact that he's been working out of the state. It's been confirmed. And that he would notify the court of any address changes. And we know at this point he's living in Redmond, not with his grandparents.
Yeah, that was interesting too, because I too am aware that he's not living there. I happen to live nearby. And but all the court documents say that he's living there. I mean, even that, like isn't that a crime to lie to a court? You've got that, and like you said, Allie, earlier on, witness tampering. Why wasn't he charged with witness tampering for trying to get a payout to this victim? I mean, they're recorded jail calls. You have the evidence right there. Why was that never ever pursued? Um, and we were just talking about the DA, and if this was an isolated incident, it would still be troubling. But I have a list of things like this. Now they don't have as strong evidence that I've looked into, and a lot of them are still being pushed through that process of gathering evidence. So this one is unique in the sense that it was kind of all wrapped up and looked like it was bundled up and ready to go to court, ready for a conviction, and then just took a total 180. So, are there any other details that you guys wanted to discuss? I mean, we don't have to, but we haven't really touched on the incident itself, other than her being dragged back into the room. Again, it's all on that website. If people want to go there, it's all listed, all the details, all the graphic details. So it's up to you guys. I don't know if you guys wanted to talk about that, or if there were any details that I left out that you wanted to touch on.
I can kind of, go over it high level. It's really hard to talk about, but we discussed they came into Andy's apartment. He was there just to get his belongings. They were broken up. It was very clear in the text messages that I've seen between them that she's basically like, come get your shit. Like, this was not let's get back together or like have a last hookup. Like, she was done. He put his
And
hands around her
she
neck
gave him a whole,
house.
sorry to interrupt, but he had been given a whole week. This
Yeah.
was like the last day of that week. Hey, come get your stuff. You have a week to do it. He waited and waited and waited, and this was the last day.
Yeah. Yep. And then, he took her phone and keys, demanding the passcode. She wouldn't give it to him. Like, we're broken up. You don't need to be going through my phone. And I think the fight escalated. I know he dragged her by her hair into the room, forced her down, started strangling her. And then, of course, she's screaming for help, trying to fight against him. And the details get a little bit blurry for me, but at one point he did end up, taking off her pants and raping her while still constricting her hair, covering her face, all of those things. After the rape ended, the strangulation continued. She lost consciousness. She was bleeding out of her nose from I know he had put a pillow over her face and then like
hit her
smacked it hard enough that it caused her bloody nose. And then, he was trying to suffocate her with the pillow. And then I think she went out to get help like a couple different times and, knocking on doors and nothing happened. And the abuse continued for hours, a long time. And eventually he stopped and, Andy went and she took a shower because she was bloody and it's really difficult to discuss the details, but she told me that she talked to him after, just saying like, that what you just did, like, you raped me, you tried to kill me, you did these things. And he was just like, nobody's going to believe you. Like, they're just going to think that we had sex because we're boyfriend and girlfriend, which even if they were at the time, no means no. Doesn't matter if you're in a relationship. It doesn't matter if you're married. It doesn't matter how many times you've had sex with someone. No means no, no matter what. And the strangulation, like, she thought she was going to die. She lost consciousness. She blacked out. And when she came to, he was still strangling her, still suffocating her. It's just like, I'm sorry. It's really hard to talk about. I don't know, Mom, if you want to talk more.
I know that this is an odd little detail I remember, but because it was a reasonably new apartment, she was very excited to decorate it. And, she's a cute young gal. So her bedroom was pink. And the police had to take her brand new pink comforter and her pink sheets, and so much stuff of hers was taken, including all the clothes she had on for DNA evidence. Her apartment was trashed. It was a crime scene. And she was so upset about not only what happened, but then being a girl like we all are. I want my stuff. And she didn't have stuff anymore because it got taken. We sent her new stuff immediately. And we were like, come home. But to have your bloody comforter and pillows and your clothes, to go through the sexual assault exam, to get the police department sent a woman to the hospital with this special camera and lights. She had to stand naked in front of them while they took all these pictures that show bruising way into the deep levels of your muscles. And it looked like a murder scene, her whole body. Yet here we are. And I don't understand why the district attorney is not looking at this evidence more harshly. Something in her head changed, and it's not okay with us. And we're not going to be quiet anymore.
On the stuff you just talked about. Go ahead, Allie.
I just thought of another interesting detail in January. After the trial was continued that same week, Jeishon had contacted the district attorney's office saying that he had some of Andy's belongings that he had taken and he wanted to return them in hopes that they would allow him to leave the state to see his new baby that he just had with a woman out of state. When she got the belongings back from the district attorney's office, these were special things that our dad had given her. I think even her social security card was in that box, but it was all destroyed. It looked like it had been sitting outside in a box that
covered in dirt,
molded, covered in dirt. And the DA's office or the judge ultimately told him that he could not leave the state, even though he returned the belongings. But it confirmed to us that he had been leaving the state because he just had a baby with someone out of the state. And I just think it's also extremely violating that after he, essentially tried to kill my sister, he took all of the things that he knew were the most special to her from our dad, who is no longer with us. It was really heartbreaking. And when she got them back and it was just a box full of broken
items,
it was like another slap in the face.
That's horrible. And the way you just phrased that, you said tried to kill her. So someone had a question about that, with the strangulation, like why no attempted murder charge? And that makes me think, why not a kidnapping charge? Or I'm not sure what it's called in Oregon, but holding someone against their will, not allowing them to call 911. Those things come to mind. And also this, you didn't, reading the reports of what happened, the victim testimony, this was not just a normal rape. This was not just a normal assault. This was almost torture.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this was somebody, it was like a simple disagreement over him wanting her phone, which he has no business having or needing in the first place. Even if you're a couple, not a thing. People are allowed to have their own private things. But anyway, so he wanted her phone and wanted it now. And he got it because he stole it. So theft comes to mind for a charge. But now that he has it, he can't get onto it. He doesn't have a passcode. And the only way to get the passcode is to get her to tell him the passcode. So he mounts this hour plus campaign to torture her until she gives up the passcode. So this was not just a I'm mad at you and I hit you in a fit of rage. This was malicious. This was thought out. And he had every opportunity to stop and calm down and walk away. And he even did, based on the victim testimony, he even did at times go into the other room. But he essentially drags her into the bedroom, according to testimony, and then tortures her, covers her mouth for 30 seconds or so, and then gives her a couple seconds to breathe, and then covers her mouth and nose again, and then gives her a couple seconds to breathe, and does this for an extended period of time, repeatedly asking for the passcode. And despite all that, because Andy is brave and obviously does not give in to terrorism, she persists, and that was when the rape occurred. He used that as a final tool to get what he wanted. And it's just absolutely horrible reading through that. When Andy had sent me her testimony, I was sick to my stomach the rest of the evening. And I have almost zero connection to the case. I can't imagine why there were not more charges. I mean, is there not a charge for terrorism, for torture? Because that's what this seemed like, and the evidence, the bruises, the strangulation, all point to that, and they corroborate her story and not his.
And it is a crime to take someone's phone and their ability to get help.
Yeah, it's awful. We questioned the charges from the beginning too, because we thought he definitely deserved an attempted murder charge. He tried to kill her and he didn't succeed. We also thought some sort of hostage or kidnapping charge should be in there for, not letting her leave. And I don't know the Oregon laws and why they chose the charges that they did, or how they ultimately came to the decision that he deserves assault for all of this. It's just, it's absolutely devastating.
This is the reason women don't tell. This is the reason women don't stand up. And for obvious reasons, our family did keep this quiet for over 2.5 years. Now we're done. We're being loud. We want this to get the attention it deserves. We want to seek justice for Andy.
And I did a little research on that. You mentioned, this is why people don't call the cops. And this is from the RAINN Institute, RAINN. They're probably the largest institute for helping victims of violent sexual assault. And this graphic shows essentially out of every 1,000 sexual assaults, around a third of them are reported. So 2/3 of them aren't. And then only 50 out of 1,000 are lead to an arrest, and 25 end up getting sentenced any sort of jail time. That is absolutely insane.
Horrible.
We claim to live in a civilized society, and these statistics are completely unreal. But Dana, you mentioned, wanting the people to help out, wanting people who are concerned. There's so many people concerned. So many people want to help out. What can people do?
I feel like people need to show up at the courthouse to support Andy. Fill that courtroom. Let them know that this is not okay. Write to the judge. Send him a respectful letter saying, please review this case before sentencing. Please read every word of it. Write to the district attorney. Flood their emails. This is not okay. There's so many women who have commented on your local Facebook pages in Coos Bay, where we have posted the website, about violent crimes that have happened to them too. This isn't a standalone case, but I'm her mom and I'm going to fight this one. And I want all women to get the justice they want and deserve. And he should be in prison. He should not be walking free, because the next time Jody Newby sees him in her courtroom, it will be for murder. I can almost guarantee it after what he did to Andy.
Yeah, and I mean, it's almost if he can do this to Andy, and if the system can do this to Andy, then anyone can. I mean, the amount of evidence in this case is staggering to just end up at assault for misdemeanor. I mean, I don't even want to speculate as to what that sentencing will end up being because I've seen it. I've seen with that crime, you get a couple days in jail, and he's
Yeah.
already served, I think, a week, so they're going to give him credit for time served.
Right.
I really don't want to know. So hopefully we can avoid that day, avoid sentencing. I know we've talked about a little bit, and we're still doing research, but there's essentially a way that a victim in this case, because it's a violent assault, a violent crime, she has elevated rights as a victim. So the district attorney is supposed to communicate with her ahead of time about plea deals and still getting all the details. But from what I understand from talking with the defense attorney, and in very specific detail about the timeline, when things happened and when they didn't happen, and then also speaking with you guys and Andy, I'm pretty close to a conclusion that she wasn't really involved, that the DA made up her own mind and decided to accept this plea deal before uh, communicating with Andy about whether or not she was okay with it, whether or not it was appropriate, and whatnot. So it sounds like, from what I can gather, that it was about 2 weeks ago, a week before trial, that the conversation even started about a plea deal. And there was no indication whatsoever to the defense attorney that the DA was even interested. It was just like a random conversation that he brought up, that he initiated. And then first thing Monday morning, this was last Monday, a few days before trial, she called him up and accepted the plea deal. And based on that timing, I know that she did not contact Andy until after that phone call and explain that she was accepting this plea deal. And that's troubling. But hopefully that actually might be what saves this, and it might just postpone sentencing. But hey, that's something, and we'll see what we can get with that. Maybe it causes the judge to throw it out and start all over. Maybe it goes to court because of that. And hopefully that does happen. So we're looking into. I don't know if you guys did any more research into that, but that my I'm not a law enforcement person or a legal analyst, but Google searching and some things tell me that might be the right avenue in terms of what she can do. And then public pressure, I think, is going to
Right.
help in this situation as well.
It is a direct violation of Andy's constitutional rights.
Yeah, and we never even received justification on the decision to take it down to one assault 4 charge. I feel like Andy deserves that. How did you come to that decision? And what makes you feel like that was a good enough for the crimes that he committed? And this is not just, our fight isn't just for Andy. This message, this is setting a precedent for survivors that are coming after her to know, like, if this is how it ends, then and why even bother go through all this? Why bother being reviolated over and over and over again? And the trial prep is gruesome. She has to, open up this box that she's built in her brain to try to keep this locked away and just live a normal life. And every time we have to do this trial prep, we open it back up, the wounds get opened again, and it's so traumatizing for her, for all of us to have to live through constantly. And we deserve some sort of explanation. But also we want to make sure that, survivors everywhere know that, like, don't stay silent. That is not going to stop this. We're not going to get anywhere with domestic violence or a sexual assault if we stay quiet.
And you talked about the DA kind of giving, why did this take a turn at the end here? And Andy did appeal to the DA directly and kind of say she spelled out her case, all the evidence and what it meant, and she did talk about the DNA, paperwork situation, and like you said, hey, okay, so that gets thrown out. Well, you know, um, anyways, I saw the DA's response, and that was disgusting. I mean, that
Right.
was cold and heartless. And that's all the context I have. I don't know the DA. I don't know her personally. I don't know what was in her mind at that moment writing that response to Andy. I don't know. There's a lot I don't know, but it felt really, really cold and heartless, given what I know of the evidence and the circumstances that, Andy was really not included in that decision. And, even if it ultimately falls upon the DA and her authority and she can make that decision, the conversation I saw did not show that the DA knew the gravity of such a decision, even if it was hers to make. I mean, that was rough. But I did mention that we're looking into her using her constitutional right to point out that violation. That doesn't mean people shouldn't get involved. That doesn't mean that you guys should just sit back and let us do that. That's we still need people to get involved. We still need people to share this video, share the story, put something in the comments about how you feel about it, share it on your own page and write how you feel about it. And if you can, make it down to court on Monday. I believe it's 2 Mondays from now. It's incredibly important that the DA's office and the judge see the gravity of the decision they're about to make. Visually, see it, see how many people that it will affect, and that there are that many people that are willing to take off an early morning Monday from work and make the effort to come down to the courthouse. This is a unique case and it's worthwhile showing up for. So, I don't know if you guys had any more to touch on. I know, Allie, I'm trying to be respectful because you said an hour and we're already 15 minutes over. But I'm here as long as you guys need me, and want to make sure we cover everything.
No, Chris, I just want to say thank you for caring and for giving us a platform to tell Andy's story. Knowing that she won't get her chance at trial to tell everyone what happened, so we really appreciate the opportunity to speak for her now, and hopefully get the local community supportive of her and of victims everywhere, especially in Coos County. Like, hearing that this is not just a problem with this case, but it's a problem with a lot of things that are happening in that county. I just think it's really important for all of us to step up and show these government officials that we don't accept this. We want justice. So thank you.
You're welcome.
I agree. Thank you so much for taking interest and for posting and for bringing public awareness to this and trying to help get justice for Andy.
Well, we all have a network, whether it's digital or in person, and we can share this story and hopefully pack that courtroom on June 1st. And I know there are people who are close to this as well. I saw Rochelle made a comment there, and Dylan, the neighbor. There are people who are very close to this case. I'd welcome anybody to come and do one of these chats, and we can get into a little or as much detail as you would like to, but there are people out there who have information and who know things, and that this case came very close to their lives and interconnected with them. So people need to kind of step up and share their view on this and their side of the story. And I would just encourage them to reach out to me, and I can make that happen. So thank you guys so much for being a part of this and sharing your story. You guys are warriors, and we'll keep in touch. And I believe If there is a sentencing on June 1st, Andy is going to come on and kind of give her story. Let her, because she wouldn't have had the opportunity in court to tell it. So we'll give her that opportunity, and I'm sure you guys will be part of that as well. So we'll keep in touch. Hopefully that sentencing does not even happen, and this will be a victory for you guys and for all women out there. Because like I said earlier, this is not the best that we have to offer young women in America. So
Yeah. Thank you, Chris.
thank you guys.
Thank
Really
you.
appreciate you joining, and have a happy Memorial Day.